And ask for the roll call, please.
Councilmember Abdelgawad.
Here.
Councilmember Baker.
Present.
Councilmember Barber. Okay. Councilmember Burke.
Present.
Councilmember Ingert.
Present.
Councilmember Forster.
Present.
Councilmember Holman.
Present.
Councilmember Townsend.
Present.
And Mayor Turnbow.
Present. Before we rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, as we gather this evening to perform our duties for the citizens of Raymore, let us take a moment to remember the innocent lives and first responders' lives lost on this date 22 years ago. Please join me in a moment of silent prayer for the 2,977 souls lost that day and for the survivors who suffer that loss every day. Thank you. And now you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, everyone. And we have no presentations or awards this evening, no personal appearances. So we'll move on to staff reports. Mr. Murdoch.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everyone. We're kind of going to run a little bit of a skeleton crew here tonight on the staff reports, as you might be able to see. So the first one on development services, Mr. Gress is actually finishing up at MML today, and he did provide you with the staff report within your packet. I do have a couple of things to highlight off of that for him. The first one is you'll notice that we had 13 detached single-family residential permits here in August. We're still lagging behind our 2022 numbers, obviously, but he did want to call your attention to getting back into the double digits there. The other one is going to be the commercial, the new additions and alterations. There was one permit there. That is going to be for the work that is being done at the Quilted Cow. So if there's any questions on what that permit was actually for in terms of the additions and alterations, that is going to be the work that is being done there at 214 West Walnut for the Quilted Cow. The other thing within that report, and it happened just today, just so that you know, is we actually started getting the tenant finish work inside of Starbucks started today. So I think he had noted in your packet that it should begin soon, but they actually were on site today and are beginning work there on the inside of Starbucks, and the exterior work is nearing completion. Nice to have the drive open up again too for everyone to get back into Culver's and get some of the traffic flowing back through there. That concludes the staff report on development services, but we're happy to answer any questions on it.
Thank you, sir. Any questions of Mr. Murdoch? Seeing none. Anyone else?
Okay, yeah, so the police emergency management report, I'm also going to do for Mr. Baldwin, but there's a great reason for this. Mr. Baldwin is not here tonight. He was going to be here, but he and his wife had their second baby boy this morning, Ellis. They both, all three, are doing fantastic. I just talked to him before the meeting, and so he did send his apologies for not being here, but he's where he should be, obviously, right at this exact moment. So congratulations to Mr. Baldwin and his family on adding a baby boy. The one item that he was going to address tonight is on the emergency performance, the emergency management performance grant, which I am very familiar with as well. But I wanted to make sure and let the council know that a trend is developing, unfortunately, in relation to that particular grant, and that is the federal government continues to lower the award for that particular grant that is getting dispersed to the states, and as a result, then the states are having to make some pretty drastic decisions on what they are going to fund in local jurisdictions. So in Jefferson City, we still have the State Emergency Management Agency that takes up just about 50% of those EMPG funds through staffing, resourcing, and things like that. Unfortunately, for local jurisdictions, what this means is that that grant is only going to fund salary of one position and 3% of benefits. Before, it was nearly all salary benefits, plus we were able to fund our siren contract and some equipment purchases for an emergency operations center. From a numbers perspective, just so the council is aware, this means that just within the last 3 years of this particular grant, we are going to have seen a reduction of nearly $20,000 that we are getting from the state. This year, last year's award, just for you to have that awareness, last year's award was $83,000. We matched that. It's a 50-50 match with the grant, but the total award was $83,000. This year, we're going to be down at $64,000. We have been as high as $108,000 in the past. In fact, the second to last year that I was in that role, that's when we had that. We've never expensed less than 95% of the funds, so we're always in full compliance with the grant. So it's a little bit disappointing that this is happening, but we did want to make sure that the council was aware that this is now a 3-year trend of funds continually getting reduced through this particular grant, and that's what Mr. Baldwin was going to share tonight. That concludes the staff report on emergency management, but happy to answer any questions on that as well.
Any questions? Yes, Mr. Townsend.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Murdoch, for that report. Given your last statements, what impact is that forecasting on our emergency preparedness?
It's a good question, sir. Right now, from our perspective, we'll still be able to budget for the items that we need to continue the program. There's no doubt about that. I do think from a state perspective that they are going to have to continue to be looking at what the agency is capable of doing and how much then of the responsibilities are going to get passed down to the locals in what would essentially become unfunded mandates from the agency down to the local jurisdictions. And so those are things that we will have to watch out for as we get into the 24 and 25 grant cycles. But for now, we're in very good shape as a local jurisdiction.
Mr. Murdoch, does this also mean that the onus might be on me as the mayor if there were an emergency in our community to more immediately ask for assistance from the state and other resources if we are continuing to reduce our own?
It's possible, though. We would still have the protocol of going through the county and then the state. The county emergency management does still have some resources available as well. I would think, currently speaking, sir, right now we do have the resources for the small localized emergencies and disasters that we would face. So I wouldn't foresee us needing to declare an emergency any quicker at this exact time, but it would be something to monitor over the next couple of years.
Okay. All right, thank you. Anyone else? All right. Any other department head reports?
No other staff reports for tonight, sir, except then to just note for the council for your work session next week. There's 3 items on your work session agenda for next week. We'll be talking budget next week. Hopefully you've had some time to review the budget. So we'll be talking about that. We'll have the peculiar animal control agreement with the city of Raymore on the agenda, and then we'll also be talking some scoreboards throughout the community. That's what will be on your work session agenda for next week. Okay. And that concludes staff reports tonight, sir.
Thank you, sir. Any questions of staff on those items? All right. Well, we'll move on to the consent agenda. We do have the one item under the consent agenda this evening, and that's the council meeting minutes for August the 28th. I'd entertain a motion to dispose of this item.
Mr. Mayor,
Mrs. Belgawad?
I move that we approve the consent agenda, including item A, City Council meeting minutes for August 28th, 2023.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there a second?
Yes, sir, I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Townsend. Motion's been made and seconded to approve the consent agenda. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries unanimously, 7-0. We'll now move on to unfinished business. Could I please have the second reading of Bill 3846 by title only?
The second reading of Bill 3846 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, authorizing the mayor to enter into a cooperative cost-sharing agreement with Cass County, Missouri, for the construction of transportation infrastructure improvements to Prairie Lane.
Thank you, ma'am. I know that they are very anxious to get this signed ordinance so they can start the work on this particular project, and I know that Ms. Hill has actually prepared one in the event that you all approve it this evening, so I can get it signed and we can get it down there to them pretty quickly. So I will entertain a motion to dispose of this item.
Mr. Mayor,
Ms. Belgawad?
I move that we approve Bill 3846, the Prairie Lane Cost Share Agreement.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there a second?
Yes, sir, I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Townsend. Motion's been made and seconded to approve the second reading of Bill 3846. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries unanimously, 7-0. Could I please have the second reading of Bill 3843 by title only?
The second reading of Bill 3843 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement with Legacy Underground Construction, Inc. for the fire hydrant and valve replacement project, City Project Number 23-430-201/202, in the amount of $199,750, and authorizing the city manager to approve change orders within established budget constraints.
Thank you. We got a thorough staff report on this at the last council meeting, and if there are no further questions, I'd entertain a motion to dispose of this item.
Mr. Mayor,
Ms. Abdelgawad.
I move that we approve Bill 3843, award of contract for fire hydrant and valve replacements.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there a second?
Yes, sir, I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Townsend. Motion been made and seconded to approve the second reading of Bill 3843. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries unanimously, 7-0. Thank you. We'll now move on to new business. Could I please have the first reading of Bill 3848 by title only?
The first reading of Bill 3848 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, approving and authorizing the city manager to enter into agreement with Dana F. Cole and Company, LLP, to serve as the independent auditor for the city for a 3-year period.
Thank you. Is there a staff report?
Yes, sir, there is. We'll call on Ms. Williams to make the staff report.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Murdoch. Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. Before you this evening for your consideration is a contract for auditing services for the city's financial statements. The Government Finance Officers Association recommends the state and local governmental entities obtain an independent audit of their financial statements. Staff issued a request for qualifications for the services of an independent auditor to provide auditing services for the annual combined financial report of the city. Dana F. Cole and Company, LLP, was the only firm to respond. Dana F. Cole is our current auditing firm, and staff determined that they are still the best qualified to complete the city's annual audit of financial statements. That concludes staff report.
Thank you. Any questions of staff at this time? No one? Thank you, Lisa. If there are no further questions, I'd entertain a motion to dispose of this item.
Mr. Mayor,
Ms. Abdelgawad.
I move that we approve Bill 3848, award of contract for our auditor.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Yes, sir, I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Townsend. Motion's been made and seconded to approve the first reading of Bill 3848. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries unanimously, 7-0. Could I please have the first reading of Bill 3847 by title only?
The first reading of Bill 3847 by title only, an ordinance of the City of Raymore, Missouri, authorizing the city manager to enter into a non-exclusive public right-of-way license agreement with Google Fiber Missouri, LLC.
Thank you. Is there a staff report?
Yes, sir, we'll call on Mr. Zerr to make the staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Murdoch, Mayor, members of the council. What you have before you this evening with Bill 3847 is an agreement with Google Fiber LLC for Missouri involving a 1% payment that would be made to the city for utilization of, of right-of-way within the city in the expansion of their communication services. Previously, Google has been providing service under the service franchise and telecommunications provisions, and this is going to expand their network to allow voice over network protocol, as well as an expansion of their current broadband internet service. That would not have necessarily been qualified under the franchise provisions, and so they are entering into agreements with municipalities around the state that would allow for the continuation of the utilization for the right-of-way for the 1% that they are receiving. Happy to answer any additional questions you might have.
Thank you, sir. Are there any questions of Mr. Zerr? All right. Thank you, sir. If there are no further questions, I'd entertain a motion to dispose of this item.
Mr. Mayor,
Ms. Abdelgawad.
I move that we approve Bill 3847, the Google franchise agreement.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there a second?
Yes, sir, I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Townsend. Motion's been made and seconded to approve the first reading of Bill 3847. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion? Motion carries unanimously, 7-0. That concludes new business this evening. It's a light agenda. We'll now move on to public comments. If anyone from the public would like to address the council at this time, please step forward, state your name and address for the record, and try to keep your comments to 5 minutes or less. Captain Irwin, how are you this evening, sir? Good to see you. If there's nothing, we'll move on to Mayor Council Communications, and Mr. Burke, I'll start with you this evening, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Wanted to say congratulations to the growing Baldwin family, and hopefully they will enjoy these first few weeks. I'm definitely, it's a good thing for him to be there. And the second thing I wanted to say, that's all I'm going to say on that. And I wanted to thank the Silver Lakes Home Association. They had a Bach party last Saturday that was really well attended, and it didn't rain. It was beautiful weather. And they got a tent that they didn't need, but it was great to sit under the tent and sit at the tables. Well done. Thanks.
Ms. Forster.
Thank you. I just wanted to, again, express my condolences for the 9/11 for people that have had to deal with the memories and the loss of the loved ones, and that hopefully at some point everybody gets a chance to see the memorial.
Thank you. Mr. Townsend.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also want to congratulate the Baldwin family, as well as remembrance of those impacted by the 9/11, those who have served or those who have lost loved ones in service to country or on that day. Definitely taking the time to pause and remember those and memorialize in memory on those that were lost on that day. So I just want to keep my comments short this evening in respect to that. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Baker.
I'll just concur the thoughts of my fellow council members and turn it back to you.
All right. Thank you, sir. Mr. Ingert.
One quick comment. The no peddler, no solicitor stickers that go on the front door have become a big hit. I've made 3 trips up here to restock ours. They're in Morning View, so pass on my thanks to having those out there as well. And again, thanks to the staff for all the great work and efforts that they put in here.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Abdelgawad.
Thank you, sir. Just a quick reminder that we have the Raymore Festival in the park. Not a city event, but lots of fun for people in the city coming up Thursday, Friday,
Yep,
Saturday.
Thank you for that. Yeah.
Yeah.
A good reminder. And you, sir. Mr. Holman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to express my appreciation for your statement to open the meeting tonight. I'd like for everybody to just take a moment. If you think back 22 years ago, we tend to think of the first thoughts that come to your mind are New York, the skyline, the towers, Shanksville, the plains, that kind of thing. But if you think about the local impact, the mayor was the chief of police at the time and was quickly recalled in his status as a Navy officer to the Pentagon because we weren't sure there were going to be more attacks. Ended up serving in Afghanistan in a theater of war. Mr. Townsend was in the U.S. Marine Corps, was TDY to Camp Lejeune at the time, did not get deployed, but had the unenviable task of becoming the casualty officer via notification. He had to go knock on doors and tell people that their loved one was not coming home. I'm not sure which is worse, being deployed in the theater of war and wondering if you're going to come home or giving that message out to fellow servicemen every day. But we have heroes here among us on this council and in this town. And don't forget, we have a connection to that event, just like everybody from the East Coast did. That's all I have, sir.
Thank you, sir. And kind of as a segue to that, as you know, every year since, there are actually 6 moments of silence that are recognized for the events of that morning, all that occurred within the first couple of hours of the first attack. You've got the attack on Tower 1, the attack on Tower 2. You've got the attack on the Pentagon, the plane that was down and probably saved the Capitol building from destruction by the good folks on board Flight 93. And then you have the collapse of both towers, and those specific times where hundreds, if not thousands, of lives were lost. It is worth remembering. It was a tragic event that affected, I would say, everyone here in this room. Life has changed from what we knew back on September the 10th, 2001. And it is something that we carry with us on a daily basis, and for generations it will carry on as well, especially as the enemy themselves continue to regroup and offer threats to the Western way of life. So I thank you for that moment of silence before the meeting. You all mean the world to me. And that's all I have to say this evening. And we have a reason to go into executive session, do we not, sir?
Yes, sir. Litigation.
I would entertain that motion.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we move into executive session to discuss litigation as authorized by RSMO 610.021.
Thank you, Ms. Abdelgawad. Is there a second?
Yes, sir, I'll second.
Thank you, Mr. Townsend. Motion's been made and seconded to move into executive session. Could I have the roll call, please?
Councilmember Abdelgawad,
Yes?
Councilmember Baker,
Yes.
Councilmember Burke,
Yes.
Councilmember Ingert,
Yes.
Councilmember Forster,
Yes.
Councilmember Holman,
Yes.
Councilmember Townsend.
Yes.
We will now move into executive session. Upon adjournment, we will come back to regular session for adjournment from regular session.